Hello! If you're visiting for the first time, it's fantastic to have you here. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. This video features mostly true, scary stories with the sound of gentle rain in the background. If you're looking for something to help with sleeplessness, anxiety, or stress, you're in the right place. If you enjoy the stories, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. Thank you for being here. I have something special just for you. Today, I'm going to share a spine-chilling tale about a mirror that doesn't just reflect what's in front of it. This mirror has a soul, and it sees you in ways you can't imagine. As you listen, I want you to picture yourself in the story, feeling the thrill and the fear. But wait, before we dive into this eerie adventure, I want to tell you about an amazing weight loss dietary supplement that can help you shed those extra pounds even while you sleep. Yes, you heard that right. Imagine waking up lighter without lifting a finger. Click the link in the description below to learn more about this incredible product. Now grab your favorite snack, get cozy, and let's step into the world of the mirror that sees you. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Are you ready? Let's begin. I was so excited when I received an antique mirror as a gift. It was beautiful, with intricate designs on the frame. But soon I noticed something strange. My reflection didn't always match my movements. Sometimes, it seemed to smile when I was frowning or make faces when I wasn't looking. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. But then, one night, I saw my reflection staring at me, its eyes wide and curious. I felt a chill run down my spine. The next day, I noticed that my reflection seemed to be waiting for something, watching me closely as if it knew my secrets. As the days went by, I started hearing whispers coming from the mirror. It was a soft, eerie sound that made my heart race. I couldn't understand what it was saying, but it felt like a warning. I tried to ignore it, but the whispers grew louder, and the reflection began to move on its own. One evening, as the sun set and shadows filled the room, my reflection reached out a hand, pressing against the glass. I gasped in fear. It looked so real, like it wanted to escape. I backed away, but the mirror seemed to pull me in, its dark surface swirling like a storm. I told my friends about the mirror, but they laughed and said I was imagining things. But I knew what I saw. I could feel the mirror's power growing stronger, and I was terrified of what might happen next. One night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the whispers, and they seemed to call my name. I crept out of bed and walked toward the mirror, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. My reflection smiled wider than ever, and I could see its eyes glinting with something dark and mischievous. Suddenly, the glass rippled, and I felt a cold breeze wash over me. I stumbled back, but it was too late. The reflection reached out, its fingers brushing against my skin. I felt a jolt of fear and excitement. What did it want? I realized that the mirror was not just a reflection. It was a doorway to something else, something dark and powerful. I had to find a way to escape its grasp before it pulled me in completely. But how? The whispers grew louder, and I felt the mirror calling me, promising secrets and wonders if I just let go. I felt that jolt of fear and excitement as the reflection's cool fingers brushed against my skin. My heart raced, and I stepped back, trying to catch my breath. The whispers in the room grew louder, echoing in my mind. They seemed to wrap around me like shadows, making the air thick and heavy. I could hardly breathe, and every instinct told me to leave the mirror behind. But I couldn't move away. Something deep inside me wanted to know what the reflection was after. It felt like a puzzle, waiting for me to fit the pieces together. Then, right before my eyes, the mirror shimmered. The air crackled, and with a blinding flash, I saw images swirling within it. I saw places I recognized, my room, my garden, but they looked twisted and dark, like something out of a nightmare. Suddenly, the image shifted, and I saw myself, but not the way I expected. The version of me in the mirror wore tattered clothes, and her eyes were full of shadows. She looked sad but angry at the same time. I tried to shake the feeling of dread that crept over me. I wanted to turn away and forget about it all, but something in her gaze held me captive. The whispers turned into a low giggle, and I jumped. That laugh sent chills down my spine. It was sweet yet sinister. I blinked hard, hoping it would all disappear, but the reflection began to change again. The girl looked directly at me now, her mouth moving, but I couldn't hear her words. I moved closer, and her voice suddenly became clear. "Help me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please let me out." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Was I supposed to help this eerie version of me? My feet felt glued to the ground. The girl in the mirror raised her hand, and I noticed her fingers were not just reaching out. They were pushing against the glass, digging in like she was trying to break through. I froze, torn between fear and a strange sense that she was telling the truth. The surface of the mirror rippled like water under a breeze, as if it were alive. Just then, I remembered all the stories I had heard about haunted mirrors, tales of people getting trapped inside reflections, unable to escape. My blood ran cold as I realized I might be looking at one of those stories come to life. I had to figure out what was happening before it was too late. Struggling to think clearly, I took a step back and glanced around the room. A chill swept through, making the hairs on my arms stand up. I could still hear the laughter echoing in my head, and I felt the weight of those haunting eyes watching me. I tried to focus on the girl in the mirror, but something felt off. It was like she was changing as I watched her. She smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a grin that stretched wider, revealing sharp teeth. I stumbled back again, feeling panic rise in my chest. "No," I said, shaking my head. "This isn't real." But deep down, I knew it was very much real and getting more intense by the second. "Let me out," she repeated, her voice turned into a hiss. "You have to let me out." Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the room, and the mirror began to shake. I pressed my hands to my ears, but the sound grew louder, like thunder crashing in the silence of my home. Images began to flicker wildly. I watched as the reflections showed moments of my life. Happy moments, sad moments, flashing by like a movie, but they were twisted and wrong. Then, darkness engulfed everything, and the girl's laughter turned into a piercing shriek, freezing me in place. What had I stumbled into? I felt cold sweat trickle down my back. My imagination was running wild, but I couldn't bring myself to look away, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. And just like that, in the heart of this fear, I suddenly wanted to scream, to cry for help. But when I opened my mouth, no sound came out. The mirror began to vibrate, and shadows sprang to life in the corners of the room. They wriggled, twisting and curling, creeping closer. I felt their icy touch on my skin, like ghostly fingers reaching out to me. "Join me," the girl in the mirror whispered again, her tone dripping with seduction. "We can be free together." Her eyes were wild and desperate. Was she really trapped? Or was this all a trick? I wanted to believe that she was innocent, lost and alone. But that look in her eyes made me afraid. I took a step back, and the shadows seemed to shrink, but they were still there, lurking, waiting for me to make a mistake. I couldn't stay here any longer. I turned and ran from the mirror, but I could feel the energy pulling at me, like a dark cloud following close behind. I rushed out of my room and slammed the door shut, my heart pounding. Maybe I could escape, but deep down, I knew I couldn't shake off the whispers. They would follow me. As I leaned against the door, panting, I glanced down the hallway. Everything felt different. The colors in the walls seemed dimmer. The air was heavier. It was like the house had changed too, becoming part of the darkness that lived in the mirror. I couldn't stay alone. I needed someone to help me understand what was happening. I made my way to the living room, hoping my mom was there. Yet as I approached, I saw the reflection of the light flicker in the glass table. And there, for just a moment, I caught a glimpse of my own reflection. But there were shadows creeping behind me, filling the space where I stood. Was I going crazy? Was it the mirror's influence, or something worse? I took a deep breath and willed myself to calm down. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, but I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in. I grabbed my phone, intent on calling someone, anyone, but as I looked down, the screen flickered and faded, leaving me staring at my own worried face. Panic shot through me again. I was alone, and the silence was more unsettling than the whispers. Suddenly, I heard soft knocks behind me, a rhythm that sent chills down my spine. I turned, heart racing, and the air around me turned cold. The mirror in the living room caught my eye, and I could see shadows swirling within it again, shapes moving, breathing. Every instinct screamed at me to run. I took a step back, but cold fingers wrapped around my wrist from behind. Those same ghostly touches that had chased me earlier were now grabbing hold. I looked around, eyes wide in horror, but I couldn't see anyone. "How do you feel?" a soft, familiar voice said, and it sent terror rushing through me. It was my own voice, echoing back at me but twisted. I gasped and turned, still feeling the grip on my wrist tighten. In the dim light, I could make out the reflection of the girl in the mirror moving closer, her body merging with my own. I was trapped in this nightmare, and soon, the boundary between reality and the reflection would break. I had to think fast. I pulled away, my heart pounding like a drum. With every ounce of strength, I shouted, "No!" The grip loosened just enough for me to break free. I dashed toward the front door, desperate to escape, to find the truth, but still feeling the unending call of that sinister mirror haunting me. The echoes of laughter swirled in my ears, and I knew the girl in the mirror was coming for me. She would stop at nothing to get free, and I might be the key. The shadows danced in the corners of my vision as I burst outside, the chill of the night air hitting me like a wave. But even as I fled, I felt her presence lingering, waiting. The whispers in the air began to transform, becoming louder and sharper. They ripped through the silence, becoming a cacophony of voices, all pleading and demanding. I could hear my name being called, over and over, blending with the laughter that twisted my insides. Each time I took a step further from the house, the shadows behind me seemed to stretch and grow, clawing at my heels, trying to pull me back. I could almost see their forms in the corners of my eyes, lurking just out of view, hungry for the light. I stumbled onto my street, the moon casting long shadows that danced on the pavement. But I felt drawn to the comfort of the woods at the end of the road, knowing that danger lurked back in that mirror. The way the trees swayed and whispered felt the same as the echoes in my head, urging me to hide. Breathing deeply, I looked back at my home, the windows dark and empty, yet shadows flickered behind the glass, reminding me of the nightmare waiting inside. I couldn't go back. I needed to keep moving to find safety. As I turned toward the woods, I heard a low whisper, this time clearer than ever. "Come back," it said, heavy with longing. I ran into the trees, my feet pounding against the earth, every instinct screaming at me to escape. I had to figure this out. What was the mirror? Why was she trying to pull me back? I could feel my heart racing, each beat echoing in my ears as I pushed deeper into the darkness. I stepped on leaves and twigs, the sound of crunching breaking the thick silence. The trees closed in around me as I moved forward, branches clawing at my clothes like skeletal hands. The whispers faded slightly, but that eerie laugh still haunted me, a reminder that I couldn't run forever. Then, I saw a flicker of light ahead. It glowed softly, pulling me closer like a guiding beacon. As I approached, I realized it was a small clearing surrounded by tall trees. The moon illuminated the space, making everything shimmer with an otherworldly glow. In the center lay a stone, ancient and weathered, covered in strange markings. I wondered if this could help me. Maybe it held the answer to breaking the mirror's hold over me. But as I knelt to examine it, the laughter returned, echoing around me, growing louder, circling me like a storm. I could feel the shadows from the mirror creeping nearer, drawn by the light. And just like that, I understood something terrible. They were hungry, waiting for me to surrender to the darkness, to give in and let the girl in the mirror take control. "No," I whispered to myself as the laughter turned into a chorus, rising and falling like waves crashing in a storm. I needed to fight back, to take control of my own story. I couldn't let it end like this. Gathering all my courage, I stood tall in the clearing, facing the shadows that threatened to engulf me. "You don't own me," I shouted, and for a moment, the laughter faltered. Darkness paused, swirling hesitantly around me, as if it was caught off guard by my defiance. But before I could breathe a sigh of relief, another voice broke through, this one much stronger, closer. "You'll never escape," it thundered, and suddenly, the shadows lunged at me in a chaotic rush. I fought against the overwhelming wave, determined to stand my ground. I reached out toward the stone, desperately hoping I could unlock something hidden within its age-old secrets. Clutching its sides, I felt the energy pulse through me, connecting with the earth beneath. At that moment, I made a vow to reclaim my life. I wouldn't let the girl or the whispers take me. I would find a way to banish the darkness and become stronger than whatever was lurking in that mirror. Even as the shadows clawed at my feet, I closed my eyes and let the warmth radiate through my hands into the stone. "Help me resist," I murmured softly. The energy around intensified, and I felt a surge of hope. "You can try, but you belong to me," the voice echoed, the laughter crashing like thunder in my ears. I opened my eyes as the shadows swirled violently, trying to break through the light I was channeling. The world around me faded into chaos, colors mixing and distorting, yet I held tightly to the stone, grounding myself. The legacy of fear burned within me as I whispered, "I will not be afraid." And then something within the stone shifted. Lights began to flicker, illuminating the clearing in dazzling colors. The whispers turned to screams, sharp and piercing, as the shadowy figures recoiled from the brilliance. In that moment, I knew I had found my power. I took a deep breath, channeling it all to banish the darkness. Everything erupted as the shadows writhed against the light. Did I have the strength to push them back? With renewed determination, I shouted, "Go away! You have no hold over me!" I felt the echoes of my voice resonate, intertwining with the magic in the air. The response was instant. A bright flash erupted from the stone, blinding and warm. I could feel the shadows shriek and retreat. For every ounce of light I created, the darkness seemed to dissolve, turning from solid shapes into wisps of black smoke. Yet, I knew I couldn't let my guard down. The darkness was angry, furious at my defiance. It coiled around the edges of my vision, whispering taunts that chilled me deep. "You think you can defeat me? You'll never be free," it hissed, the voice slithering into my mind, making my thoughts feel murky. Determined to push through, I focused on the light radiating from the stone, drawing strength from its ancient energy. I imagined it growing stronger, brighter, expanding like a fire igniting in the dark. "You don't control me," I yelled, my voice steady. "I will break this curse." As if acknowledging my words, the bright light spread, and I felt warmth envelop me, wrapping me in protection. With each pulse of light, the terrifying figures began to unravel, disintegrating into a cloud of shadows that flickered like dying flames. But I couldn't let up, as fear lingered at the back of my mind, reminding me about the girl from the mirror. Out of nowhere, I saw her emerge from the swirling shadows. The reflection of my haunting double, twisted and angry. "You can't escape me," she screamed, her voice a low growl that sent shivers down my spine. Her once mournful tone now dripped with malice, and her sharp grin filled me with dread. "There are worse things than being trapped," she taunted, stepping closer, her fingers reaching out toward me as if trying to grasp my very soul. I felt the pull of her darkness, a familiar temptation that seemed soothing despite the chaos around us. It was as if she knew my deepest fears and insecurities, whispering the things I was most afraid to face. "Join me," she urged, her voice silky and inviting. "Together, we can be powerful. You can lose yourself in blissful surrender." I felt my heart race. There was a dark appeal tempting me to embrace that sweet surrender, but I pushed back against it, grounding myself in the light that consumed the clearing. "No, you're just a reflection of my fears," I yelled, more confident this time. "I won't allow you to take over." But the shadows twisted again, swirling in a chaotic dance that threatened to pull me under. "You're weak," they shouted, "just like everyone else. We can give you strength. Just let us in." The laughter returned, But it was different this time. It was deep, unsettling, echoing like a haunting melody that made my skin crawl. I realized they were trying to make me doubt myself, trying to shake the courage I had found. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the shadows moving closer, forming figures that resembled faces from my past. Friends, family, people I cared about. But they looked twisted and wrong. Their eyes were vacant, reflecting my worst moments, memories I wished I could forget. They appeared sad, angry, and instantly, the laughter morphed into soft sobbing, deep and forlorn. "Remember when you failed?" One shadow asked, its voice dripping with sorrow. "How you let everyone down?" The memories flooded back, and for a split second, I hesitated. My breath quickened, feeling the weight of doubt settle upon me like an unwelcome blanket. I saw the worried looks, felt the disappointment wash over me. "You're a failure," the shadows taunted again, intertwining my doubts with their darkness. But then I thought of the stone's warmth pulsing in my hands. I remembered that I was fighting not just for myself, but for the light I wanted to protect. In a surge of defiance, I stepped forward, raised the stone high, and shouted, "You don't define me. I'm more than my failures. I choose to rise above." As the words left my lips, a blinding flash erupted, illuminating the whole clearing. The shadows recoiled, twisted in agony, their faces contorting into grotesque shapes as the light bathed them, stripping away the lies. The light felt pure and strong, pushing the darkness back, forcing it to unravel. I narrowed my focus on the girl's reflection. She screamed, her voice filled with rage and pain. "You will regret this. You can't escape the truth." The light swirled again, illuminating the entire space like the sun breaking through clouds. "The truth is just a part of me," I replied, my voice steady, fighting against the remnants of fear. "But I won't be swallowed by it. I will choose to face it." With one final push, I slammed the stone down, and a wave of energy surged outward. The darkness shivered, shrieked, and retreated, scattering like mist dissipating in the morning sun. The clearing trembled under the weight of that moment, and I felt the air shift as the girl in the mirror flickered, her form becoming unstable. Just then, a cry pierced the night, a chilling wail that echoed through the woods. I looked around, and the shadows around me began melting away into nothingness. I could see the trees absorbing the remaining darkness as if they were alive, their ancient roots woven into the very fabric of the earth. But just as the tension began to ease, a cold, consuming gust of wind blew through the clearing, causing me to shiver. I turned back toward the mirror, my heart pounding with dread. Was it really over? The reflection danced erratically, and I saw her again, the girl locking eyes with me. "You cannot do this," she cried, her voice a faint murmur now, filled with the remnants of anger mixing with despair. "You don't understand what you're giving up." Before I could respond, she lunged toward me, and an empty darkness erupted from the ground, swallowing the stone and everything else in an instant. The sudden shift threw me to the ground, and I felt the earth tremble beneath me. I scrambled to stand, but the ground bucked and heaved, pulling me down as the darkness closed in. I saw tendrils sprouting from the shadows, grasping, wrapping around my ankles, and pulling me in like a whirlpool. Panic surged in my chest as I fought to gain my footing. "Help! Someone please!" I cried, panic rising as the shadows tightened their grip, sending waves of fear through my body. I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing down, wrapping around my chest, constricting my breath. "You can't escape your past," the girl whispered, her voice echoing in the dark around me. "You have to give in?" But through the chaos, I dug deep inside myself, searching for that flame of courage. I remembered who I was beyond the shadows. I took a deep breath, channeling that energy once more. "No, I will find my way." With a fierce determination, I pulled against the tendrils, ripping them away with all my strength. I felt the shadows recoil, unsteady and fearful now, only amplifying my resolve. The stone was gone, but the power within me remained. As I broke free, Shards of light erupted from my heart, radiating around me like fireworks in the dark. The tendrils began to evaporate, dissipating into thin air, leaving nothing but a faint echo of despair. Behind, I sensed the girl's presence growing weak, her voice fading into an unsettling silence. "Run!" The echo faded, but her tone was clearer now, less certain, almost desperate. I didn't hesitate, sprinting through the clearing and deeper into the woods, where the moonlight guided my way. But behind me, I could still feel the darkness chasing, the pull of the mirror haunting my every step. I plunged deeper into the trees, navigating the branches and shadows that danced ominously. My heart raced faster with every step, adrenaline surging through my veins. Was the darkness really gone? Or would it follow me until the end of time? The thoughts raced in my mind as I ran, but I wouldn't stop. I had to escape. I had to believe that I could outrun it. Then, through the thicket, I spotted a glimmering light in the distance. It flickered like a candle flame, drawing me closer. Was there safety ahead? With newfound hope, I pushed through the branches, striving for that sign of refuge. As I neared, the warm glow enveloped me, feeling like a safe haven. But the laughter echoed behind me, taunting me, growing louder. "You can't hide from us," the girl shouted, her voice mixing with the whispers of the shadows. "We will always be a part of you." I felt the familiar chill creeping back, the fear threatening to seep through my resolve. But I couldn't let it take me again. Not now, not after everything I had fought for. I stepped into the light, ready to face whatever awaited, prepared to find the truth behind the mirror once and for all. Just as I took that final step, the shadows lunged from the trees, reaching toward me with grasping fingers, attempting to pull me back into the dark depths. A scream echoed through the night, one filled with both rage and longing. I braced myself for the confrontation, knowing this was the ultimate test. With every ounce of courage I possessed, I stood my ground, ready to fight against the shadows, ready to confront the truth before me. I wouldn't allow the mirror to claim me. I had the power to break free, and I was determined to do so, no matter the cost. My heart pounded as I stepped into the light, determined to face whatever awaited me. The shadows lunged forward, swarming like a dark tidal wave, and I could feel the chill creeping into my bones. "Don't let them in!" I yelled, my voice echoing, desperate to assert control. I braced myself for an impact, expecting a cold hand to grab me and pull me back, but instead, the light grew stronger around me. I realized this wasn't just light. It was warm, enveloping like an embrace, pushing the shadows back. They hissed and writhed, shrinking under the brilliance, but I could still hear their whispers. "You can't escape what you are," they sneered, their voices dripping with malice. "We will always be inside you." The warmth around me felt alive, as if the light itself was fighting for me, intent on keeping the shadows at bay. I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath to steady myself. I needed to remember who I was in this dark game. The air shimmered with tension, heavy and thick, and I forced my eyes open to meet that glow. It was brighter than I could have imagined, sparkling like countless stars woven into a tapestry. I looked around and realized I was no longer in that unsettling clearing. I stood in what seemed like a vast expanse of light, beautiful yet eerie. But the shadows were relentless. They crawled forward, dancing along the edges of my vision, eager to claw their way into the luminous space. "You think you're safe?" the girl's voice echoed, taunting. "You can't run from your truth. You invited me here." I shook my head, rejecting her words. "You're just a reflection of what I've been afraid of. I won't let that fear control me." The shadows ignited with rage, swirling around me aggressively. They began to form shapes, images that flickered and faded like bad dreams. I saw visions of my past, the times I had let others down, the moments of deep sadness and regret. Each flicker filled me with dread, pulling at the core of my being. It was as if they were trying to break me, digging into the wounds of my memories, wanting me to relive each painful moment. "Face it," "You're not good enough," they shrieked, throwing my insecurities back at me as if they were weapons. The air thrummed with their anger, and I felt a wave of panic rise inside. Those shadows knew me too well. Suddenly, from the depths of the swirling darkness, I heard a distant cry, a sound filled with despair. "Help me!" A hushed, familiar voice reached out, striking a chord within. I felt a surge of protective instinct, realizing that this was not just me they were coming for. It was everything I cared about, every relationship that mattered. "Stop!" I shouted, pushing through the pain, clenching my fists as I fought against the overwhelming urge to give in. "You're wrong. I won't let you take them." My heart raced, and I began to think of all the people I loved, the ones who had always believed in me even when I couldn't believe in myself. The vision around me flickered with a hint of their faces, their smiles, and the joy we shared. I felt the warmth return. "No!" Their screeches echoed, furious that I could stand resolute. "You can't keep them in the light forever," they roared, clawing at the fading images with despairing fingers. Drawing strength from those memories, I stood taller, refusing to back down. "I decide who I am. You don't own me." The more I believed in my choice, the brighter the light became, shining like the sun breaking through storm clouds. With newfound energy surging through, I stretched my arms towards the light, reaching deeper into that radiant power. "I choose freedom," I yelled, and with that declaration, the light exploded, shattering the darkness around me like glass. The shadows screamed, their forms collapsing as the warm glow engulfed them. For a brief moment, I could see their faces contorting in horror, their twisted expressions vanishing into thin air. Yet, even as they faded, I felt their lingering presence clawing at the edge of my mind, waiting for a chance to return. I stood in the brightness, my heart racing. My head spun as I tried to catch my breath, but I couldn't linger. I had to keep moving. The fear for the ones I loved pushed me onward. They needed me to be strong. I turned, and ahead of me stood a pathway formed by flickering light, calling me to step forward. I could still hear distant whimpers echoing, and the thought that they might be lost in darkness drove me toward that path. But just as I began walking, the ground shook beneath me. The air thickened, growing heavy like an anchor trying to drown me. Gritting my teeth, I pressed on, determined to reach the end of this cursed journey. As I moved deeper into the light, I could hear the shadows swirling behind me, clinging to my heels like a terrible dream refusing to end. A guttural sound erupted, a mix of anger and resentment. "You'll pay for this," the girl shrieked, her voice dripping with malice again. "You won't escape the truth. You belong in the dark." I could feel her presence growing closer, the shadows combining in a last-ditch effort to pull me back. The warmth of the pathway began to flicker, the safety I had felt waning. I realized that whatever near escape I had tasted could easily slip away. "Just give me one more chance," the girl whispered, tauntingly seductive. "You can come back home. Just let go." The ground underfoot pulsated, and I stumbled. The light trembled around me like it was about to extinguish, leaving me blinded by fear. I saw glimpses of familiar places, my childhood home, my old school, all shrouded in shadows that threatened to consume them. "No!" I shouted, struggling to hold onto my resolve. But the darkness coiled tighter around me, whispering sweet lies. I could feel the despair creeping in again. "Remember?" It hissed. "If you turn back, you can avoid this pain. Just surrender." As dread clawed at my chest, I remembered the love surrounding me, brightening my heart. "You have no power over me," I roared, instinctively placing my hands on my heart, focusing on that pulsating light inside me. Drawing deeper from the strength of my memories, those of joy, laughter, and connection, I felt the truth rising like a tide. "You don't control me anymore," I cried, and suddenly, the light around me exploded in a blinding wave, radiating outward with an incredible force. The shadows shrieked, their forms fraying at the edges as they struggled against the power surging through me. I could feel the very foundations of their darkness crumbling as the warmth enveloped me like a protective shroud. But I knew the battle was far from over. With renewed determination, I launched into the light, ready to confront not just the girl, but the source of the darkness that had latched onto me for so long. I raced forward, the path ahead shimmering like sunlight upon the ocean. But as I dashed through the luminous corridor, the final remnants of darkness lashed out, snapping at my heels, determined to drag me back. I could hear the girl's haunting laughter echoing behind me. You think you can outrun your own soul? You're mistaken, but I wouldn't let fear define me. I could feel my heart surge, each beat carrying the weight of my past and the joy of hope. I pressed forward, willing the light to guide me toward the truth, determined to unveil the power behind my own reflection. Suddenly, the light before me intensified, branching into dozens of radiant tendrils. I was surrounded by a halo of brilliance that felt both familiar and foreign, pulling me closer to the truth I sought. There, at the end of the path, I saw a doorway shimmering with possibility, a passageway leading into the unknown. With a deep breath, I stepped through, feeling the surge of energy lifting me, wrapping me in warmth and safety. But the shadows were relentless. They loomed outside the doorway, like angry storm clouds, waiting for an opening. Still filled with determination, I pushed forward, knowing that I had to face whatever was beyond that door. The shadows snarled, their voices rising in a wild cacophony. You will regret this. You belong to the darkness. But as I crossed the threshold, I felt something shift within me. The light enveloped my entire being, transforming doubt into strength. I was ready for one last confrontation, one last battle for my soul. Everything faded into a brilliant white, and I closed my eyes against the blinding light. And as I stood there, caught in that moment of uncertainty, I knew deep inside that this was the final stand. I would face the girl from the mirror and defeat the darkness for good this time. No more hiding. Emerging from the light, the world around me began to shape itself again, forming an otherworldly area, illuminated and vibrant. The air felt different, thick with possibility, yet heavy with a sense of foreboding. And there she was, the girl, standing confidently at the center of the new realm, a smirk dancing on her lips. "Welcome back," she purred, her presence both alluring and frightful. There was no turning back now. I could feel the strength surging within me, ready to confront every shadow and fear she embodied. "I'm here to take back what's mine," I said, determination coursing through my veins. And in response, a darkness began to swirl around her, feeding off my fear, seeking to bring me low. "Then let's see how strong you really are," she sneered, and in that moment, I knew the final confrontation had begun. The room twisted as the girl's smirk deepened, and the shadows around her flickered like flames growing hungry for a feast. I stood frozen, feeling the oppressive weight of fear pressing down on me, and for a moment, panic gripped my chest. The dark energy crackled, pulsing like a heartbeat echoing through the space. "Do you truly think you can win?" she taunted, eyes gleaming like those of a predator. The shadows writhed, forming shapes that swirled and darted around us, taunting me with their whispers. "You have always been weak. Just give in." I fought to hold my ground. The air felt thick and heavy like it was choking me, but I couldn't let her see my fear. Gathering every bit of strength I had, I took a step toward her. "You don't know me," I replied, my voice steady, though the tremor in my hands betrayed my nervousness. As I stepped closer, the shadows lunged, racing toward me, trying to envelop me in their darkness. I dodged sideways, but I could feel the breath of cold air grazing my skin, and a chill crawled up my spine like fingers brushing against my neck. With every beat of my heart, I felt the darkness trying to pull me down, dragging me back into the depths of despair. "Just give up," she hissed, and I saw glimmers of faces within the shadows, my friends, my family, twisted in pain and fear. "They're gone. You can never have them back. Embrace your failure." A surge of anger filled me. Feeling the warmth of the light from before, I fought against the swell of sorrow. "No, I won't let you have them. I won't let you take me," I shouted, forcing my voice through the swirling mass of shadows as I clenched my fists. The girl's laugh echoed coldly through the air, a sound that rattled my resolve. "You really think you can resist? Look at them." She gestured toward the shadows, and everything around me seemed to dim. The faces of those I loved formed and twisted, despair etched on their features as they reached out, their hands clawing for my attention. Suddenly, images of my past flashed violently through my mind, each one sharper and more painful than the last. The moments I had tried to forget, screaming fights, lonely nights, and heavy burdens pressed down with no relief in sight. I could feel my heart racing, the suffocating weight threatening to pull me under. But deep within that swirling vortex of regret and pain, a flicker of strength ignited. "Remember who you are," I whispered to myself, the words tumbling like a mantra in my mind, drowning out the noise around me. I pushed against the shadows, forcing a path through their malevolent grasp. With a sudden determination, I shouted back, "You're wrong. I can't let you destroy me." The light inside me surged, warming my chest and spreading out like a wave, pushing against the darkness that threatened to engulf me. The shadows shrieked, recoiling momentarily as I pulled on that radiance like a lifeline. "Foolish girl," the shadowed girl spat, her expression turning to something darker, something truly sinister. Her voice dripped with venom, and in that moment, the shadows transformed, rippling and swirling into a monstrous form, a grotesque nightmare that embodied all my fears. As it lunged toward me, sharp claws extended and fangs bared, I felt the ground quake beneath me. I stumbled back, heart pounding wildly. The creature was a swirling mass of everything terrifying I could possibly imagine, all my deepest fears given flesh. I could see the twisted faces, haunting my every thought, and they echoed with terrifying voices. "You will fail. You cannot escape your own mind." Terror sent icy fingers creeping up my spine, but I remembered what I was fighting for. I gathered the courage inside me, clenching my fists until my nails dug into my palms. "I'm not afraid of you," I yelled, a newfound fire igniting in my belly. The creature paused, confusion flickering across its monstrous face, a reflection of my fear for a moment. I took that chance and surged forward, light coursing through my veins, wrapping around me like armor. I knew I had to face this, to confront everything I had hidden away in my heart. "This ends here," I shouted, the words like thunder rolling through the space. I charged at the monster, feeling the power building within me, determined not to let the shadows take another inch. As I approached, the creature shrieked, its form shifting and writhing chaotically, desperately trying to avoid the light. I plunged forward, my heart racing as I raised my hands, feeling the energy pulse between my fingertips. I chose to rise above. The light erupted from my hands, a brilliant wave that collided with the darkness, illuminating the space around us. For a moment, I felt invincible. The shadows screamed, their tortured wails filling the air as they retreated, the monster's form dissipating in the brilliant light. The faces of my loved ones grew clearer, their expressions shifting from fear to gratitude. I could feel their warmth, their love transforming the shadows into something softer, gentler. But just as victory felt close, the girl emerged from the wavering darkness once more, her anger palpable. "You think this is over?" she sneered, summoning the shadows like a storm gathering strength. "This is only the beginning." The air crackled, the sweetness of victory quickly turning bitter as she pointed toward me, her voice rising to a chilling crescendo. "You'll pay for this, and I will make sure you feel every ounce of regret." In that moment, I felt the ground tremble violently, and tendrils of shadow shot out like vipers, snaking toward me, eager to pull me back into the abyss. The air turned heavy again, and panic threatened to take hold. "What are you waiting for?" she cackled, her laughter echoing with sinister delight. "Join me again. It's easier than fighting." I felt the pull of the darkness, trying to seep into my core, and I fought back the urge to surrender. No, it's not easier. I choose the light. With every ounce of strength, I forced back against the shadows, seeing the flickering images behind the girl. A family gathering, laughing friends, and moments of joy. I reached for those memories, pulling them tight like a lifeline. Desperation surged in me, and with a deep breath, I summoned every ounce of power I had left. I remembered who I was. I will not let you win, I barked, the light pulsing around me again, a beacon of strength breaking free. Suddenly the shadows hesitated, and I launched forward, wave after wave of light erupting from my being, pushing against the encroaching darkness. The air filled with the scent of smoke and ash, and the shadows hissed and curled back. "Do you really think you can fight your own darkness?" she spat, her feigned confidence faltering as the light pressed closer. "You may have battled, but the truth will always haunt you." I advanced closer, pushing through her fear-inducing words as they tried to curl around me like slippery snakes. "The truth isn't my enemy. You are." My voice thundered against the smothering darkness, my heart racing as the light expanded around me. With one final surge, I thrust my hands forward, shattering the darkness with a brilliant explosion of light that erupted like a sun, painting the night with hues of gold and lavender. The shadows shrieked, twisting in shock, their forms fading into wisps of smoke and nothingness. For an instant, silence enveloped me, the cacophony of despair gone, replaced by a calming warmth that cradled me in its embrace. I stood alone in the quiet, breathing heavily as the remnants of darkness dispersed into the ether. But as I took a moment to gather myself, a cold breeze wrapped around me, and an unsettling feeling washed over the calm. I hesitated, a chill creeping back down my spine, sensing that something still lingered in the corners of my mind. In the stillness, shadows emerged anew, sleek and shadowy, swirling from the corners with quiet menace. The girl's voice echoed softly. "You see? You can't escape my whispers. I'm never truly gone." I stumbled back, heart racing as I felt the darkness begin wrapping around me once more, insidious and lingering. Fear seeped back in, and I could feel the weight of doubt trying to settle, clawing at my spirit again. "No!" I shouted against the tide, trying to push the shadows back, but they only multiplied, feeding off my anxiety. I gritted my teeth, determination surging, realizing this wasn't a battle I could win once and for all. It was an ongoing struggle, a fight I would have to face daily. Each inch I took away from the darkness only gave it strength to fight back. As the echoes of the girl wrapped tighter, I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe deeply and find that flicker of light within. "I won't let you control me. I define who I am." I focused, channeling everything, the love, the support, and the hope, all powering my resolve. As I opened my eyes, I stood tall, ready to face whatever haunted me next. The light within flickered brightly, signaling the beginning of an endless battle, and I felt ready. Somehow, I believed that even a small spark could brighten even the darkest night. "Come at me then," I cried, my voice ringing clear through the swirling shadows. "Show me what you got." And just like that, I prepared for what was to come, ready to fight, to defend what I had, knowing the darkness could never truly win as long as the light within flickered, even just slightly. Fingers of shadow twisted around me, whispering soft threats with every movement I made. I could feel cold tendrils trying to creep into my soul, each one a reminder of my failures, my fears, things long buried. I gritted my teeth and took a step forward, light gathering around me, but shadows swirled like a storm, ready to consume whatever might hold me back. "Do you really think your light is strong enough?" she said, her voice slithering through the air. "It won't last. It never does." The shadows shimmered and dissolved, only to reform into darker, thicker shapes. I could see monstrous eyes peering out from the void, waiting for the right moment to strike. My heart raced, the frantic sound in my chest drowning out the quiet whispers. I was trapped, surrounded by a feasting darkness, ready to devour anything it could find. Suddenly, I felt something grasp my ankle. I looked down to see a shadowy hand emerging from the ground, fingers clawing upward. Panic surged through me, and I jumped back. It was a grotesque figure pulling itself free from the gloom, a body made of shifting darkness, its mouth stretching wide into a menacing grin. "Join us! You belong in the void," it rasps, and I felt the air around me chill. "Give in, we can make you whole, free from all pain." I shook my head, refusing to give in. "I will not. You are not real. You can't hurt me." My shout echoed, but doubt clawed at my resolve. The shadows didn't relent, and I could see the grotesque figure loom closer, a nightmarish grin spreading across its twisted face. Each moment felt like an eternity as the creature advanced. The room warped and twisted. Walls seemed to bend, and the ground trembled beneath my feet, vibrating with a low hum that rattled my bones. The air grew thick, suffocating, and I could feel the shadows press in from every direction, as if the room itself was alive and eager to consume me whole. I stumbled, fighting the urge to scream, to run, but there was nowhere to go. "Face your truth." The girl's voice dripped with malice, mingling with the laughter of the shadowy figure. "It's only going to get worse from here." I realized the darkness was feeding off my fear, growing stronger with every anxious thought. I clenched my fists, digging my nails into my palms, focusing on the light within me. "You can't take me," I shouted defiantly, my voice stronger than I felt. "You're just a reflection of my own pain." At that moment, the shadows recoiled slightly as if my words struck a nerve. I took a deep breath, pushing back against the waves of darkness closing in. I needed to prove to myself that I was more than just the fears they whispered. "I won't let you bully me anymore." Beneath my feet, an area began to swirl with an unnatural energy, shadows thickening and dissipating like vapor. The creature lunged at me, but I sidestepped just in time, feeling the rush of cold air whip past. I had to keep moving. As I darted forward, something pulled at my hair, and I spun around to see another shadow forming, reaching out with long, skeletal fingers, its face a mask of hollow eyes and a gaping mouth. The overwhelming scent of decay wafted around me, and I fought the urge to gag. "You can't escape your destiny," it screeched, its voice slithering through my mind. But the panic roiling in my stomach ignited a fire inside me. I felt the light surge, a pulse of warmth blooming in my chest. "I am not bound by your fate," I shouted, charging at the shadow. "I will forge my own path." As I plunged forward, I felt the corners of the room quaking, shaking off the remnants of despair that clung to me like mist. My light flared, a brilliant beacon cutting through the oncoming darkness. With each heartbeat, I felt the grip of shadows weakening, even as more clawed at the edges of my vision. The creature writhed, howling as the light pushed deep into the heart of the shadows. I could see the girl's face contorting in rage, fists clenched in disbelief. "How dare you fight me?" she shrieked, and suddenly, the ground beneath me transformed, shifting like waves lapping at a shore. The room pulsed and dimmed, each shadow trying to twist into something far more monstrous, something that would terrify me into submission. I hardly had time to register the chaos before the floor opened up beneath me, a swirling abyss of darkness that beckoned me to fall forever. I gripped the edge as it swallowed everything around it, light flickering like a candle threatened by a gust of wind. Mustering what strength remained, I pulled back. "I will not fall," I yelled, my voice ringing loud and clear as I felt the light surge once more. The darkness howled around me, furious and relentless. Faces emerged and vanished within its depths, all mocking my struggle, a cruel symphony of laughter echoing through the void. I could hardly tell where the shadows ended and my fears began. But there was a flicker of hope in the madness, an echo of laughter that wasn't tainted by despair. "Fight," it whispered gently, the voice of my heart encouraging me to rise against the tide. I channeled that hope, letting it fuel the growing light within. No more running, I proclaimed, pushing back with every ounce of willpower. I steadied myself, staring into the swirling chaos, forcing my determination forward. No one owns me. Not you. Not your darkness. With every breath, I felt the balance shift. Shadows howled, the cacophony building, creating a maddening whirlpool of noise. I held my ground, ready to meet whatever came next. As the mixture of shadows swirled, I could feel the energy around me becoming electrified, brimming with tension that felt like it could snap at any moment. Suddenly, from the maelstrom, I saw them, not just shadowy faces but solid figures. They were memories from my past, faces of loved ones lost. Their eyes searched mine, radiant yet sorrowful. "Help us," their cries echoed, blending with the darkness, urging me to remember them, pushing me toward despair. I felt the tears stinging my eyes as the memory of their laughter flickered. I had to hold on, not for my sake, but for theirs. "You're not gone. I see you," I screamed against the encroaching darkness, tears streaming down my face. Their presence fueled my fire. Each sob turned into a mantra of hope. In that moment, the shadows recoiled, their eyes widening in shock as I stood completely grounded in the light. The energy surrounding me pulsed brighter, bursting forth with renewed strength. I am not lost, and neither are you. I could feel the warmth expanding, embracing the chilly tendrils of darkness, bridging the gap between fear and love. I reached deep into that glowing core, ready to break the chains that bound me. "You will not win," I commanded, and the room shook as my voice combined with the brilliance of my light. With a blinding flash, the light shot outward, spiraling into the shadows. The figures shrieked, their shapes deepening, twisting in agonized torment as I felt the very foundations of darkness tremble. I was breaking through. I was shattering the veil that sought to keep me trapped in despair. But just as the weight of my fears began to lift, something dark and malevolent formed in the eye of the storm, a creature far more terrifying than before. It loomed larger than the shadows that surrounded me, eyes like black holes sucking in all light. "You foolish girl, you think you can control me?" It roared, its voice booming like thunder. The very air crackled with power, and the shadows began to coalesce into something monstrous, its tendrils stretching toward me with ferocious intent. Every instinct inside me screamed to run, but I stood firm. I knew this was the true test, the final battle that would determine my fate. "Bring it on!" I shouted defiantly, heart racing. There was no backing down now. I gathered the light within, channeling every ounce of strength, love, and courage I had left. I dashed toward the creature, my heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. As I drew closer, I could feel the heat of the shadows trying to engulf me, the cold fingers grasping for my soul. "You'll regret this," it hissed, venom dripping from its words. I locked eyes with the creature, and in that moment, something clicked. I realized it wasn't just a fight against the shadows outside, but the darkness within me, a reflection of everything I feared. I summoned a radiant surge, bursting forth like a sun, rising defiantly against the night. "This ends now!" I charged forward, light cascading from my hands, a shield of brilliance that swallowed the encroaching shadows. The darkness writhed and screamed, contorting and twisting back, unable to breach the light's pure essence. And with one last push, I plunged into the heart of the chaos, ready to melt away the dark fingers threatening my soul. I felt the power surge, fear now transformed into courage. Walls began to crack and crumble, shadows peeling away like skin from bone. As the light blazed through the room, the creature shrieked one final time, a sound filled with primal rage, despair, and fear. I stood my ground, light enveloping me, and slowly, I felt the shadows start to dissolve, revealing the warmth of the familiar once more. But even amid this chaos, an unsettling feeling loomed, and I knew the fight wasn't truly over yet. Was this a victory, or merely a pause before the next wave of darkness? I could feel the uncertainty clawing at my mind, but instead of fleeing, I stood tall. I will not stop, I vowed to the whispers of shadows still lingering on the edges, ready to face whatever darkness might come next. But even as I stood my ground, a chill settled in the air, creeping slowly up my spine. The shadows may have temporarily retreated, but I could feel their presence lingering, thick and oppressive, more like a weight pressing down on my every thought. The quiet in the room felt almost too heavy, like a thick fog that wrapped around me, making it hard to breathe. I glanced around, half expecting the creature to leap back from the darkness, but instead, I saw nothing but emptiness. Then, out of the silence, a soft whisper began to curl its way through the air. What if they're not really gone? I spun around, searching frantically for the source of the voice. Was it the remnants of the darker figure, or just my imagination playing tricks on me? My muscles tightened, prepared for whatever came next. But all I saw was the flicker of dim light wavering against the shadows that still clung to the corners of the room. You are still bound by your fears, the voice continued, softer now but laced with malice. It slithered through the air like smoke, curling around my thoughts. How can you say you've won? I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block it out. The last thing I wanted was to spiral back into despair, but the doubt seeped in anyway, wrapping around my mind like a vice. Shadows seemed to whisper sweet lies, promising safety and peace if I just gave in. You will never be free. Your fears are part of you, woven into your very being. Suddenly, the room shook again, and I stumbled back, nearly losing my footing. With every tremor, the darkness shifted and churned, forming shapes that flickered like candle flames. The cold air pressed so close that I felt invisible hands brushing against my skin, sending a shiver racing through me. I heard a laugh then, haunting and echoing, like a distant thunderstorm rumbling in the sky. You think you can face the truth, the voice taunted, reverberating through the air as I felt the shadows begin to creep closer once more. It felt suffocating, like being pulled into a deep well of despair. My heart pounded in my chest, and I fought the urge to flee. I would not allow this darkness to pull me under. Gathering my courage, I shouted back, I am more than my fears. But then, the shadows shifted again, and the air chilled. I felt their fingers brush my shoulders, icy and malicious. Figures began to take shape around me, each one a memory, each one a moment of regret or loss. They were the fears I tried to bury deep inside, now staring back at me with hollow eyes, their mouths moving in silent cries of anguish. One by one I recognized them, the face of a friend who had walked away, the shadow of a family member I'd lost too soon, all twisting into grotesque forms fueled by my guilt and sorrow. The room felt like a nightmare come to life, a swirling mass of emotion threatening to engulf me. Look at what you've lost. You'll never be whole, they cried in unison, their voices a haunting melody that clawed at my resolve. Every tear I had held back, every fear I had tried to ignore began to bubble to the surface. It felt like drowning in a sea of regrets, waves crashing over me, dragging me down. I trembled, feeling the formidable weight pressing against my chest. I gasped for breath. Each memory felt sharper, like glass, tearing through my heart. The guilt was suffocating, and I struggled to stay grounded. The shadows closed in tighter, the air thickening, making it harder to move. But deep inside me, I felt that flickering light still burning, a reminder of who I was. No! I shouted, my voice cutting through the fog of self-doubt. You will not take me down again. I rose against the onslaught, digging my feet into the ground, refusing to yield. The shadows shrieked, their forms twisting and rippling as my light grew stronger, illuminating the darkness around me. You think you can fight us? You are nothing but a flicker in the dark, they roared, rattling the very core of my being. But I pushed back with all my might, summoning every ounce of courage I had left. You don't get to define me. I am not afraid. The words poured from my lips like fire, burning through the tangled web of despair. The room exploded with light, a blinding brilliance that illuminated every dark corner. I could feel the shadows shrieking as they recoiled from the warmth, the grotesque figures dissolving into wisps of smoke. For a heartbeat, everything felt right again. But just as I began to breathe easier, the ground trembled violently beneath my feet, throwing me off balance. I felt a familiar presence gathering in the shadows once more sinister than before. It was something far more ancient, instinctual, and primal, a darkness I knew instinctively had been waiting for this moment. "You're still here?" I whispered, panic creeping back in. The very air shifted, growing heavy with malicious intent, each breath tasting of bitterness and fear. The laugh echoed again, and I could sense it coiling around me, squeezing tighter, forcing me to recall every worry I had tucked away in the dark. Suddenly, what felt like chains began to wrap around my heart, and I gasped. "No! Get away from me!" I fought against the tightening grip, struggling to free myself. The shadows morphed again, twisting into a monstrous form that towered over me, its dark eyes gleaming with malice. "You thought you could escape?" It thundered, the voice an unsettling mixture of all the fears and doubts I had faced. I stood frozen, contemplating its power, feeling utterly small before its overwhelming presence. You are nothing but fear," I stuttered, but even as the words left my lips, I felt the trickle of uncertainty flood back in. The monstrous figure stepped closer, its breath cold and rancid. "You'll never be free while you hold on to the past. I am your truth, and you cannot escape me." The darkness stretched a clawed hand towards my throat, wrapping tightly around it and tightening like a vice. I gasped, my vision blurring, feeling my strength fade. This was no longer just a fight against shadows. This was my soul being pulled into the abyss. Just as the darkness seemed poised to swallow me whole, something deep inside ignited, a spark far brighter than before. "No!" I screamed, and my voice cut through the suffocating grip like a blade. "You're wrong. I choose my truth." The light exploded forth, engulfing the creature in a tidal wave of warmth. I felt the chains begin to crack, breaking under the weight of my determination. The darkness shrieked in rage, twisting and writhing, attempting to hold on to me, but I pressed forward with everything I had. My light expanded, blasting through the shadows, forcing the creature to dissolve into nothingness. As the darkness fell away, I took a deep breath, feeling air fill my lungs for the first time. I stumbled back, exhausted yet alive. But lurking at the edges of my mind, I sensed the shadows still lingered, waiting for another chance to creep back. I felt the weight of their presence all around. "This is not over," I whispered to the empty room, feeling ice grip my heart once more. Every shadow had a story. Every fear had a face. Just when I thought I'd won, the memories kept clawing back, ready to ensnare me in their twisted vines. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just a prelude. With one last shudder, I steadied myself, bracing for whatever uncertainties lay ahead. The shadows might bend and twist, but I would face them head on. A new determination washed over me. The night might be dark, but I was the light that wouldn't go out. And so, as shadows danced around the edges of my world, I readied myself to fight again. I knew this wasn't over. Even though I had pushed back against the shadows, I felt a lingering darkness hovering at the edges of my mind, waiting for the right moment to strike again. I glanced around the room, the once familiar space, now warped into a surreal nightmare. The light's flicker cast eerie shapes on the walls that seemed to shift and move, whispering secrets only the darkness understood. Suddenly, a sound sliced through the silence, an unsettling scratching, like nails dragging across wood. It came from behind me, a slow, deliberate scrape that made my heart race. I turned, squinting into the dim light, and saw one of the shadowy figures I thought I had destroyed slowly pulling itself back together. It moved like a wounded beast, limbs reforming and stretching as if drawn by a dark force. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, as if the very shadows I had fought were wrapping around my heart once more. Panic surged within me, but I quickly fought to regain control. I wouldn't let fear swallow me again. Instead, I took a step closer, my voice shaking but loud enough to cut through the stillness. "You don't scare me. You can't have me." The figure paused, its head tilting in a way that felt almost curious. It stopped scratching and looked up, the empty eyes glimmering with a depth of darkness that sent a chill racing through me. I could almost feel the weight of its gaze, probing into my soul, searching for cracks in my resolve. Then, with a sudden movement, it lunged at me, the darkness swirling around it like a storm. I stumbled backward, scrambling to maintain my balance, and collided with a shelf behind me. Books and trinkets tumbled to the ground, the clattering noise echoing through the room. But instead of scattering away, the shadows surged forward, morphing into tendrils reaching out for me like ghostly fingers. I knew I had to fight back, to reclaim my space. I closed my eyes, reaching deep within myself, searching for that light, the fire I had felt only moments ago. "You have no power here," I screamed, my voice ringing with desperation and defiance. The shadows fluttered momentarily, and I felt a surge of energy crackle along my fingertips. I opened my eyes just in time to see the encroaching darkness hesitate. I stretched my hands forward, feeling the warmth radiate outwards, pushing against the cold tendrils. The shadows writhed in agony, recoiling from the light, but they were relentless. There was a sudden shift. The darkness began to pulse, vibrating violently as if responding to my defiance. Wisps of shadows twirled around me, rushing in and out, filling the air with a dull roar that spiraled into a cacophony of whispers. "You can't defeat us," they chanted, the voices intertwining like a sinister song. "You will always be one of us." My heart raced faster, pounding against my ribcage. With every beat, I felt the shadows pressing against my will. They slipped through the cracks of my confidence, feeding on the uncertainties that still lingered within. Every fear I thought I'd conquered came rushing back, crowding my thoughts, bombarding me with doubts. "You'll never escape," one voice hissed, another echoed. "You always lose." Then, through the chaos, I saw them flash. Faces like images caught in a nightmare, twisted in anguish. My failures, my regrets, they materialized in front of me, each one a ghostly memory clawing at the edges of my consciousness. One figure stepped forward, a familiar face that sent a shock wave of horror through me. My old friend who had turned away in my moment of need. "See? You pushed us away. You've lost everything." I recoiled as a wave of despair washed over me. "No, you don't understand," I pleaded, my voice breaking. But the shadows only laughed, a sound that echoed in my ears, wrapping around my mind like an insidious vine. The room darkened then, absorbing any flicker of light I had found. The air grew heavy and thick. I could feel the despair pressing down against me. It felt suffocating, wrapping around me like chains, gripping my throat and squeezing with an implacable dread. "You can't hide from yourself," the figures chanted, drawing closer, their faces morphing between familiar and grotesque. As I stood there frozen, time stretched like elastic, blurring reality and nightmares until I could scarcely tell which was which. The shadows swarmed around me, and I felt like I was drowning, surrounded by a legion of my past, each memory a heavy anchor pulling me deeper into a crushing abyss. Just when I thought I would be swallowed whole, a distant thought broke through, a whisper of defiance in the chaos, urging me to remember the light within. I dug deep, summoning that flickering flame, pushing against the shadows that sought to claim me. "No, I'm stronger than you," I shouted, and the warmth inside flared, igniting the dark tendrils attempting to snare me. Light burst from my hands in a wave, washing through the shadows and illuminating the space around me with blinding energy. The figures screeched, their forms dissolving into wisps of smoke, but the shadows quickly regrouped, swirling around me, desperate to keep the pressure on. I took a step forward, refusing to let their laughter pull me down. "I am not afraid," I yelled, my voice rising above the shrieks of despair. The light pulsed with my heartbeat, brighter than ever, pushing back against the tide of darkness. Each step I took felt like a rebirth, like I was shattering the chains that held me in place. But the shadows transformed again, morphing into something more tangible, something that flickered with malicious intent. They coalesced into a single, towering figure surrounded by a whirlwind of darkness, its eyes burning with fury. "You will pay for your defiance," it roared, shaking the very foundation of the room. The darkness closed in, filling the air with an acrid scent akin to smoke and decay. I could almost taste the fear on my tongue, salty and metallic. The figure's movements were swift, lunging toward me with terrifying speed. A surge of adrenaline flooded my veins, and I braced myself for impact. I wasn't ready to let this creature crush me. The moment before it reached me felt suspended in time. With one last, desperate push, I thrust my light forward, directing every ounce of strength I could muster. Light exploded outward, illuminating the room in a blinding flash as the figure collided with my shield of energy. It shrieked, the sound tearing through the air like glass shattering. But this wasn't the end. The dark figure screamed in fury, surrounded by flickering shadows, twisting and thrashing violently as if caught in a storm. But then, in a split second, everything stilled. The room dimmed, shadows creeping back as the figure seemed to regain its form. It glared at me, its once menacing presence now twisted with a strange, unsettling curiosity. "You think you can fight me forever?" it whispered, the voice now hauntingly gentle, like a mother's lullaby laced with malice. "I'm a part of you. You cannot escape your truth. You will always belong to me." With those words, the shadows seemed to pull back for a moment, and I was enveloped by silence. I felt the icy grip of dread creeping up my spine, pushing me to the edge of panic. I had thought I could outrun this darkness, but its words sunk in, creeping like an invasive vine curling back around my heart. I took a shaky breath, rallying the remnants of courage within me. "I won't be yours to claim," I declared, but doubt began to fill my mind again. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and out of the stillness, I heard the whispers creep back, taunting me like a haunting melody. They slipped through the silence, each one sharper than the last, rekindling the memories I thought I had buried deep down. "You will never be whole," they sang. "Can you feel it? You are surrounded by your failures. They are your truth." And just like that, the shadows surged back, drawing me in with their sinister pull, nearly overwhelming me with their weight. I couldn't let it win. I had to fight back. In the heart of that darkness, I felt the flickering light inside me gutting with fierce determination. Standing my ground, I pushed against the shadows with everything I had left. "I choose my own truth," I cried out, and with that, I threw every ounce of my being into the light, feeling it pulse and surge with fiery intensity. But the shadows roared back, a cacophony of rage and despair. They closed around me, wrapping tighter as I stood firm, the air vibrating with their horrible presence. The room warped and twisted, drawing me back into a realm where light seemed a faraway dream, far from my reach. And just when I thought I had lost all hope, a flicker of light caught my eye, an image of a time long past, a fleeting moment of joy that shimmered like gold in a sea of black. It was a memory of laughter shared with friends, sunlight breaking through the trees, a feeling of pure happiness that surged through like fire. I focused on that light, letting it consume the despair. "I won't let you win. My light will outshine you," I vowed. The shadows recoiled, hissing and writhing, desperately trying to reach me as I surged forward, each step fueling the brightness burning within. I knew I could face this darkness, for I had glimpsed the strength of my true self once more. With one last breath, I unleashed a wave of light that pierced through the suffocating darkness, ready to face whatever came next. The light burst from me like a flash flood, spilling over everything in its path. I could feel its warmth chase away the cold, wrapping me in a protective cocoon. The shadows howled in fury, writhing as the light pushed against them, stretching and distorting their forms, making them look even more grotesque. It was like watching a nightmare unravel in real time. I had never seen them react this way, and the sight sent a wave of relief washing over me. But I couldn't let my guard down. I could sense that the fight wasn't over. As the light spread, I caught glimpses of the monstrous shapes that had haunted me. Twisted faces crying out in anguish, eyes wide with despair, hands reaching out as if begging for something they could never grasp. They were my fears made flesh, each one echoing tales of my insecurities and past mistakes. They swirled around me, trying to reclaim their once familiar hold. In that moment, a chill crept through the air, contrary to the warmth I felt. I shivered, sensing something worse than just shadows. A darkness more profound than all the others wrapped around me, like a heavy fog that clung to my skin. "You think light can save you?" echoed a voice, smooth and chilling, like ice slipping through my veins. I turned, my heart pounding. From the shadowy depths emerged the tall figure, its dark smoke swirling around it like an ominous cape. The swirling darkness was alive, pulsating as it moved closer, its voice dripping with mockery. "You cannot escape your reality." I gritted my teeth, pushing against the fear. "I won't let you control me," I shouted, but my voice trembled despite my resolve. With every step the figure took, my breath grew shallow. It was the embodiment of my darkest thoughts, the fears I had suppressed for so long. My mind raced, trying to remember the brightness, but the air thickened, making it hard to think. The figure approached, its eyes glowing like embers against a vast black ocean, each step resonating in my bones. The whispers of the shadows echoed louder, drowning out my thoughts. "You will fail. You will always be alone." Suddenly, I felt the cold tendrils wrap around me again, slipping into my mind, trying to surface my old wounds. Memories flooded back, moments of despair, failures, and heavy silence from those I once thought were friends. I clutched my head, trying to block them out, but they poured in, relentless as a torrential downpour. Amidst the chaos, I took a desperate breath, searching for that flicker of light. I had to find it, or I would be lost forever. "You cannot win," the figure roared, the shadows swirling more violently, making it hard to see. Then suddenly, a sound broke through the chaos. It was faint, a heartbeat of a melody beneath the roar of despair. I focused on it, grasping for the memory of joy, something that had made me feel alive. Images flashed, laughter, sunlight filtering through branches, a warm embrace from someone I cherished. With renewed strength, I pushed back against the shadows, willing the light to burn hotter. I shouted, "You don't own me!" I felt the warm surge within, spilling over, igniting the cold tendrils once more. The chorus of despair wavered, and I sensed a flicker of fear in the figure's glowing eyes. But just when I thought I had the upper hand, the room shifted again. The walls around me seemed to throb, breathing in and out like a living entity, the shadows stretching and curling like claws preparing to grab me. The light I conjured illuminated the space, but with it came a darker twist. I could now see the walls covered with scars, deep grooves resembling claw marks, as if something had tried to claw its way to freedom, but it had been trapped. I felt a rush of vulnerability sweep over me. What if I couldn't escape? The thought shimmered in my mind, creeping like the cold tendrils. The towering figure chuckled, its voice now smooth and mocking. "You think that light can change your fate? You are still bound by your fears." As its words sank in, I felt the ground tremble beneath me. The shadows morphed, drawing closer, their whispers weaving a dark tapestry around me, ensnaring my thoughts, a net of despair tightening with every heartbeat. I could see outlines of faces, the faces of people I had lost, moments of betrayal, all clawing for my attention, trying to pull me back into the depths. Then the figure lunged, and a burst of darkness filled the room as the light flickered, teetering on the edge of extinguishing. I felt panic rise within me, but deep inside, I still held on to that spark. "You'll not take me!" I screamed, summoning everything I had left. The air shimmered as my voice echoed through the suffocating void, and I felt the light swell around me, forcing the shadows back momentarily. But even as I fought, the weight of dread pressed in, leeching away my strength. I could hear the shadows whispering again, their voices merging into a terrible drone. They spoke of inevitability, of the futility of this fight. Each word latched onto my heart, digging deeper, threatening to rip me apart from the inside. Just then, the ground beneath me cracked, and I stumbled, my focus wavering. The figure loomed closer, its face now twisted into a form I recognized all too well. It was me, distorted and warped, displaying all my worst fears, all the hopelessness that hung over me, laughing in cruel delight. "You truly believe you can escape your own reflection?" It sneered, raising a hand that shimmered with shadows, eager to pull me back into the depths. I felt my insides churn as dread threatened to consume me. An icy spiral of despair coiled around my spine, squeezing tighter with every moment. But then, as each shadowy whisper seeped through, I remembered, only I had the power to control what I chose to believe. "This is not who I am," I shouted defiantly, feeling the light within me reignite, blazing forth like a torch breaking through the night. Suddenly, the walls shook violently as the shadows pressed harder, struggling between the light. The figure faltered, caught between worlds, as even it felt the weight of my determination. But then the air thickened and the shadows quickened. I braced myself, ready for the final surge of darkness, anticipating the impact. And just like that, the shadowy laughter erupted through the room, taunting me once more. "You think this is power? You are weak. You will become one with us." The walls began to close in, squeezing my chest and pushing the breath from my lungs, while shadows clawed at my mind, ready to engulf my light. My heart pounded as I felt more and more trapped, ready to be swept away. Fighting against the pressure, I roared, "I am stronger than you think." And then, all at once, I took a deep breath, readying myself for anything. The shadows recoiled, releasing their suffocating grip just long enough for me to charge forward. But there, at the center, I saw it, a swirling vortex of darkness, throbbing like a heartbeat, almost alive. I felt its call, tugging at the deepest parts of me, inviting me in, promising freedom. "Join us," whispered the shadows, tantalizingly sweet. I felt the pull, a dark seduction that wrapped around my heart. What if this was the answer? What if surrendering meant relief from the fight? Questions battled with my resolve. I stood at the edge, the light flickering, my breath shallow. I could feel the shadows breathing behind me, a promise of what I could be if only I gave in. But as the darkness closed in, I thought of all that I had fought for. The light, the laughter, the fleeting moments of joy I had clung to. With fiery determination, I chose the light, an action simple yet profound. And as I lunged forward with all my strength, I felt the shadows writhe, clashing against the bright energy I carried. "I will not be yours," I yelled, forcing the glow to radiate out, enveloping the shadowy vortex until it began to crumble. For a fleeting moment, time felt suspended. The darkness recoiled, the form of the figure puzzlingly shattering, leaving echoes of its previous form scattered in its wake. But I knew I wasn't done. More shadows remained, lurking, ready to seize upon my wavering spirit at the first sign of doubt. My heart raced as I took another step forward, ready to face whatever lay beyond the remnants of the storm. The whispers still carried, haunting and tempting, but I refused to let them dictate who I was. Taking another step, I steadied myself, determination coursing through my veins as I prepared for the next wave of darkness. This was my battle, a battle for my truth, a fight against the shadows that would not relent. I was ready. I stood my ground with resolve as the shadows recoiled, But they didn't give up easily. They twisted and turned like angry serpents, swirling and forming into grotesque shapes that flickered in and out of existence. The room felt suffocating, and I could almost feel the weight of the darkness pressing down on me, heavy and oppressive. In the corner of my eye, I caught movement. A shadow detached from the rest, darting toward me like a wraith in the night. I felt a chill run down my spine as it morphed into the figure of a woman I once knew, a friend who had abandoned me when I needed her most. Her face was pale, eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. She raised a hand, beckoning me closer, her mouth moving silently as if trying to speak. But the only thing coming from her was the flickering breath of shadows whispering my deepest fears. "You're all alone," she mouthed, the words echoing deep within me. It felt powerful, like an invisible hand seizing my heart, making it race with panic. I recognized her ghostly form for what it was, a trick of the shadows, a reminder of all I had lost and those who had turned their backs. As I stood frozen, the surrounding spaces shifted and warped, bending in ways that shouldn't be possible. The shadows pressed closer, wrapping around my feet, and I could feel them pulling me down into the darkness. Each slow tug felt like they were trying to drag me back to the depths where hope and courage vanished. But I couldn't let that happen. Gathering my strength, I forced myself to look away from the haunting figure. I focused instead on the light within. I wouldn't succumb to the manipulation. Channeling every ounce of what I had left, I shouted, "You're not real. You're just a figment of my fear." The room roared in response, a cacophony of whispers filling the air. Shadows shrieked in anger, their voices blending into a chilling harmony. I felt the temperature drop, an icy grip sinking into my bones as the shadows hissed. "You'll regret turning away." Suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled like an angry beast awakening from slumber. A large crack split the floor, revealing a dark pit that seemed to swallow all light, an abyss of despair. Out of it, hands emerged, gnarled and twisted, reaching for me in a hunger that chilled my blood. I felt the urge to step back, terror creeping in, but I steeled my nerves. The ghostly hands scraped against each other, creating a terrible sound, like nails on a chalkboard, and the stench of decay crawled into my nostrils, sour and bitter. In that moment, I realized those hands were full of regret and despair. Each one told a story of someone who had lost their battle, who had let the shadows take them completely. With the darkness surrounding me and threatening to pull me in, I remembered the laughter and warmth from my past, the moments of sunlight that sparked joy. I clung to those memories, using them as a shield. As the hands grasped at my ankles, I pushed back with renewed vigor. "You have no power over me," I shouted, pulling the light around me like a protective barrier. The shadows hissed, recoiling from the brightness. Yet they didn't fade away. Instead, they lashed out, the faces of my past flashing before me in rapid succession. Each one was distorted with despair, eyes wide with fear, mouths wide open in silent screams. For a moment, I felt their pain and sorrow stab at my heart. I fought against the feelings that surged, desperation trying to creep in, but I forced it down. "I am stronger," I murmured to myself. As the figures circled, the deep, echoing sound of their silent cries deeply shook me. And then, in the middle of that pain, I noticed something flickering deep within the crowd of shadowy figures. It was small at first, but noticeable, a glowing orb, pulsating like a heartbeat amidst the chaos. It jumped from shadow to shadow, moving with grace like a firefly against a dark sky. Against all logic, I felt drawn to it, a sign of hope amidst the relentless darkness. That soft sparkle flickered in and out, glimmering with something warm. With each flicker, the shadows hissed louder, anger roaring in their whispers. They could sense the light, and I felt their hatred wash over me like a wave. Taking a deep breath, I charged forward, squeezing through the grasping shadows trying to block me. "I'll find that light," I screamed, forcing myself closer to the orb. As I drew near, it pulsed brighter, and I felt a rush of warmth envelop me break. ING through the cold. I reached for it, desperate to hold on to that spark of hope that glowed, even in darkness, ready to consume me whole. Just as my fingers brushed against it, the shadows surged again, more aggressive this time, swirling like a storm around me. "You cannot have it," the figure shouted, its voice now a fearsome roar. The shadows writhed as they struck at me, desperate to snuff out the light. I could feel their energy, clawing at my essence, wanting everything I had inside. The pain was unbearable, and for a moment, I almost let go. But then I grasped the light, feeling its warmth pouring through me, like a rebirth. It exploded, illuminating the room in a radiant glow that pushed back the shadows with fierce intensity. Then, as the light spread, the walls began to crack and splinter, revealing more of the dark pit beneath. I could still hear the cries echoing from within, pulling at my mind, trying to siphon away my courage. Despite the intensity of the shadows, I had to believe. I had to hope. "I am not afraid of you," I shouted, my voice ringing out through the chaos. And as the light pulsed outward from me, it pushed even harder against the shadows, illuminating the room like the dawn breaking through a long night. But then something shifted. The shadows, furious and desperate, began to coalesce into a monstrous shape, a grotesque figure that loomed larger than anything I'd seen before. It twisted and writhed as it gathered strength, a towering nightmare with eyes that glowed like burning coals. "You will bow to the dark," it bellowed, its voice echoing with an otherworldly power. I felt the ground beneath me shake as it advanced, the shadows thickening around its massive form like smoke swirling in a storm. My heart raced as I watched the dark figure lash out. Cold tendrils reached for me, striking like lightning, trying to pull me down into its depths. I held onto the light, feeling it tremble as it fought against the overwhelming force. "No, you can't break me," I screamed, summoning all my strength. With a deep breath, I hurled the light forward as if it were an arrow, aiming directly for the dark heart of the monstrous figure. The moment the light made contact, a blinding flash erupted. The room nearly burst apart as the blinding energy collided with the darkness. A wave of heat washed over me, shoving back the shadows, forcing them to howl in protest. But even as I felt the thrill of victory, something deep within me warned that this wasn't the end. I could see the shadows regrouping, reforming into tumultuous shapes, snarling and thrumming with malice. They wouldn't give up easily. They were relentless and hungry. I stood on the precipice of despair, my heart pounding like a war drum as I prepared for the next wave. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, a sign of the impending storm, a reminder of the battle to come. The darkness roared again, furious and wild, ready to reclaim what it lost. I could feel its icy fingers creeping back, testing the barrier of light I held. It was a constant test, a loop of darkness that would never relent. I couldn't afford to let it win. I could feel the pull of despair tightening around my chest, and I took a deep breath, focusing once again on the flicker of light within me. With every ounce of my remaining strength, I steadied myself and prepared for the next clash, my voice unwavering as I shouted, "Let's finish this." I stood there, adrenaline pumping through my veins, heart racing as the darkness surged around me. I could feel the pressure building, the shadows clawing at the edges of my light, desperately trying to extinguish the flame I had kindled within myself. As the monstrous figure roared, the floor rumbled beneath me, threatening to split open and swallow me whole. The howls of the shadows grew louder, engulfing the air with a chilling chorus that rattled my bones. I tightened my grip on the light, letting its warmth radiate throughout my body. The dark figure advanced, its twisted limbs stretching and reaching for me, eager to drag me into the depths of despair. I felt the chill of the air, a suffocating reminder of the fate that awaited those who surrendered. With every passing moment, the shadows twisted into grotesque forms of the people I had lost, friends, family, faces I once knew, now mangled and torn apart by darkness. Their anguished expressions haunted me, eyes filled with regret and sorrow. I felt their pain wrapping around me like a heavy cloak, the pressure threatening to pull me down into that endless pit of darkness. "Join us," they whispered, voices intertwining in a sinister melody. The air thickened with an oppressive energy that threatened to crush my spirit. I shook my head, fighting against the despair, desperate to remember who I was amid the chaos. The light sparkled within me, pushing back against the darkness, and I could sense it, urging me to hold on tighter. Just then, I caught a glimpse of something gleaming within the shadows. It was the orb again, pulsing with energy, but this time smaller and more fragile. The darkness roared in anger, and the swirling figures reached for it, determined to snuff it out. I had to get to it. I had to protect that fragile light, not just for me, but for everyone lost in this nightmare. In an instinctive moment, I lunged forward, propelling myself through the darkness. The shadows lashed out, their icy tendrils wrapping around my ankles, trying to drag me back. I could feel the chills seep into my skin, clawing at my resolve. "No!" I screamed, pulling myself free and pushing through the suffocating fog. As I closed in on the orb, a deafening roar pierced the air, shaking the floor beneath me. The monstrous figure surged forward, its dark eyes blazing with anger as it reached out, limbs stretching out like shadows of death. I felt time slow as I focused on the light, this glowing orb of hope, ready to embrace it and send a wave of warmth through the room. Just as I reached for the orb, the darkness surrounded me completely, enveloping me in a shadowy cocoon. The twisted hands of the figures grabbed hold of my neck, cold and unyielding, squeezing with all their might. Panic surged in my chest as I fought against this dark grip, pushing back with all I had. Suddenly, the orb flared brilliantly, illuminating the entire chamber in blinding light. I shielded my eyes as a shockwave rushed over me, pushing against the shadows. The whispers turned into screams of fury as the darkness recoiled, their grotesque forms unraveling like smoke dissipating in the wind. I could hear them screeching in agony, the sounds echoing in the void as they retreated, trying to escape the brightness that threatened to consume them. But even as the light grew stronger, I could feel the ground rumbling, and the pit gaping wider beneath me, a relentless hunger beckoning me to fall into its depths. I took a step back, feeling the encroaching darkness, knowing it was regrouping, plotting its next attack. The shadows were relentless, ready to strike at any moment. I focused on the orb, my last hope. It vibrated with energy, the bright light dancing against the edges of the dark figure, creating a flickering battle between light and shadow. Just when I thought I could harness its power, I heard a voice, low and ominous, creeping into my consciousness like smoke. "What makes you think you can escape?" The figure's voice slithered through the air, wrapping around my mind. "You are nothing without your fears. They define you." Suddenly, I felt myself wavering, the tendrils of doubt creeping back in as I bared the moments that had brought me to this hell. The mistakes, the losses, and every wrong turn I had taken flooded my mind, pulling at my sanity. I could feel the cold fingers of despair inching closer, and for a moment, I hesitated. "No!" I shouted against the rising tide of anguish, gripping the light tighter. I refused to be defined by my past. My voice resonated throughout the room, rekindling a spark deep within me. The shadows flickered, their grip losing strength, momentarily stunned by my defiance. With newfound strength, I channeled all my energy into the orb, and it pulsed fiercely in response. It sent out arcs of light, pushing back the darkness, cascading against the walls, illuminating the grotesque figures that loomed in the shadow. Their twisted faces shrieked in agony, their forms flickering like dying embers as the light fought to reclaim the ground lost to fear. Suddenly, the monstrous figure charged at me, arms flailing, trying to extinguish the light with sheer force. I braced myself, heart pounding mercilessly against my chest. Just before the darkness could close in, I released the orb, sending a wave of light crashing outward like a wave on the shore. The impact was electrifying. The shadows screamed, twisting violently as the light consumed them, forcing them back into the crevices of the walls. I felt the warmth wash over me, and for a brief moment, I thought I had won. I had beaten back the darkness. But then, the room began to tremble, cracks emerging in the walls, dust falling like rain. I could feel something shifting beneath me, the ground separating further. Panic shot through me as I realized the shadows were regrouping, their anger at the dissolution fueling their power. I had only momentarily slowed them down. This battle was far from over. The light began to flicker and dim, shadows creeping back in like a tide, consuming the warmth, desperate to quench the flickering hope I carried. I needed more than just that small orb. I needed to delve deeper, to find the well of light within me strong enough to fight off the encroaching darkness. The oppressive air thickened as I fought against the rising despair. And just as I thought I might be lost, I sensed a surge from within my chest. Memories flooded back. The moments of laughter, joy, and love that had once illuminated my path. Those fragile flickers of light were still there, waiting to be summoned. In that instant, I closed my eyes and reached deep within myself. I could almost hear their laughter, feel their warmth brushing against my skin like a soft whisper reminding me of who I was. I drew upon that energy, letting it fill me to the brim, igniting a fire that could not be extinguished. With a roar that broke free from my soul, I opened my eyes, pulsing with a fierce determination. "You will not take me," I shouted, light bursting forth from every fiber of my being, sweeping through the room like a blazing phoenix rising from the ashes. The dark figure shrieked, contorting as the light surged around it, each pulse sending shocks of energy into the shadows. The cacophony of despair dissolved into mere echoes as the light pushed them back, shattering the illusions they cast. I felt unleashed, the warmth radiating through me, igniting every dark corner of the chamber. This was it. I could see the fear flickering in the eyes of the shadows as they attempted to hold their ground, but no longer could they withstand the force of my inner light. But the ground continued to shake as I focused on the light, pushing forward, and I realized that the physical structure around me was tearing apart, just like my soul had once been. The shadows were not just destroying my spirit. They were unraveling the very space around us. Suddenly, the walls splintered more, the pit below me opening wider. The swirling void threatened to pull me down, and I could hear the whispers beckoning, promising sweet relief from the pain of the fight. But I couldn't succumb. That darkness only hunted for more souls. Taking a steadying breath, I lifted my hands, channeling the brightest part of my essence forward. "I will not let this happen," I shouted, forcing the light into a concentrated beam that shot out into the dark abyss, illuminating everything in its path. As the light surged, I felt a crackling energy coursing through me, powerful enough to sweep away all that shadowed me. I continued to push forward, determined to banish the darkness despite the fear clawing at the edges of my mind. The shadows howled in despair as the light intensified, breaking through the air like a storm cracking open the sky. I could hear their cries of agony as they were engulfed, the gnarled shapes that had once seemed so intimidating now reduced to nothingness. In one final surge, the energy erupted, creating a blinding explosion of light that outshone everything, illuminating the darkness, breaking apart the oppressive gloom that had chained me for so long. The ground buckled, the walls collapsed, and I was swept away in a radiant tide, my spirit soaring as the light engulfed the final remnants of shadows that had haunted me for too long. But as the darkness disintegrated around me, I felt a strange sense of unease wash over me. The battle was over, yes, but at what cost? As the blinding light faded, I found myself standing at the edge of what felt like a new realm, one where the shadows lay defeated but still echoed in my heart. I took a step forward, contemplating where this path would lead me, knowing I had emerged from that torment, but still unsure of what awaited next. The remnants of fear lingered, whispering in the back of my mind, questions looming like storm clouds ready to burst. Would I carry the shadows with me, or had I truly escaped their grip? With cautious resolve, I continued, determined to find the answers I sought, yet aware that the journey ahead might hold remnants of darkness, yet uncharted. I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows had not been fully extinguished, lurking somewhere just beyond the horizon, ready to rise again. I took a breath, feeling the strange new world around me. The air was thick and heavy, different from the darkness I just escaped. It was like walking into a fog, an invisible weight pressing against my chest. I felt exposed like a candle in the wind. Even though the shadows were gone, I sensed that something was still lingering. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, shifting gently as if I might sink, and the once bright orb of light had vanished. In its place, a dull glow flickered around me, casting odd shadows that danced on the cracked walls. I squinted into the murky twilight, trying to make sense of my surroundings. There were no doors, no windows, only walls that seemed to close in tighter with every passing second. As I walked deeper into this eerie place, I heard something, a soft whisper. It called my name, barely audible, yet somehow familiar. "I'm here," it seemed to say, echoing off the walls like a ghostly reflection. I stopped, my heart pounding, and glanced around, half expecting to see a figure emerging from the shadows. But there was nothing, just the weight of silence pressing down on me. I shook my head, convincing myself it was just the remnants of fear playing tricks. Yet the whisper returned, more urgent this time. "Help me," it breathed, sending a chill racing down my spine. With each step I took, the whispers grew louder, turning into a cacophony of voices. It felt like a chorus of lost souls, each one vying for my attention, pleading for release. I clenched my fists, trying to block out the noise, but it seeped into my mind. Suddenly, a shadow darted past the corner of my vision. I whirled around, but nothing was there. Just the flickering glow, now casting odd shapes that looked like twisted faces, grinning and sorrowful all at once. My heart raced as a chill gripped me. I wasn't alone. I could feel a presence lurking just beyond my sight, the way cold air prickles the skin before a storm. With every step I took, the whispers rivaled the pace of my heartbeat, and soon they became a rhythmic chant. "Join us, join us!" Fear gripped me, but I pressed forward, refusing to let the shadows take me again. I could see a faint outline of something up ahead, a darker patch in the dull glow. It drew me closer, the fear intermingling with a strange curiosity that pulled at me. As I approached, the darkness resolved into a strange passageway, leading further into the unknown. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to turn back, but something important felt just out of reach. A faint light flickered at the end of the passage, and I fought against the doubt clouding my mind. Taking a deep breath, I moved toward the light. Each step echoed like a heartbeat in the silence. And just as I reached the threshold of the new space, everything changed. The walls were lined with mirrors, shattered and cracked, reflecting parts of me I didn't want to see. I glimpsed my own face staring back, but it was twisted in fear, eyes wide and hollow. I recoiled, dread creeping in as I realized that each mirror held a piece of darkness I had carried with me, memories of pain and regret. The whispers returned, louder than before, filling my mind until I thought I might drown in their noise. "We are you," they chanted, voices overlapping, each one blending into a horrifying melody that sent shivers racing down my spine. I stumbled back, slamming into one of the mirrors. The glass shattered upon impact, splintering into 1,000 tiny pieces that rained down around me like falling stars. In the chaos, a dark figure emerged from the shards, an image of me, but twisted and sinister, with a wicked grin stretched across its face. It lunged forward, reaching out with icy fingers that stretched like shadows intent on grabbing hold of my throat. A scream caught in my throat as I stepped back, heart racing, feeling my back hit another mirror. That second glass fractured under my weight, and the figure vanished like smoke. But something was wrong. I could still feel its presence creep along my skin, a cold sensation that whispered sweet words of despair. I glanced at the remaining mirrors that now contained reflections of my deepest fears, moments of failure, loss, betrayal. Everything that made me question my strength. Panicking, I turned to flee, but the passageway twisted and contorted, shifting like an endless maze. I couldn't tell which way was out, and the whispers grew louder, as if they were mocking my fear of being trapped forever. Finally, I spotted another light ahead, brighter than before. In desperation, I ran towards it, urging my legs to move faster despite the growing heaviness in my heart. I could feel the darkness behind me, creeping and clawing like an animal hunting its prey. Just as I neared the light, I felt a pull, like a rope tightening around my waist, slowing my progress. I glanced back and saw shadows coiling around me, drawing closer. They whispered my name, taunting me, promising to take me back into the abyss from which I'd just escaped. I fought against it, desperation fueling my every move. My breath came in short gasps as I reached the doorway, the light blinding and inviting. I pushed through, tumbling into a new space where the air was clearer, filled with the scent of earth and damp leaves. But as I lay on the ground, gasping for breath, I realized I hadn't truly escaped. The shadows still lingered at the edges of my vision, haunting me. I could feel them watching, waiting for a moment of weakness. The forest stretched before me, wild and untamed, shadows lurking among the trees. I got to my feet, shaking off the remnants of fear, but fully aware that this journey was not yet over. If anything, it had just begun. A rustle from the bushes made my heart race. I whirled around, eyes darting through the dense underbrush. A figure slipped into view, cloaked in darkness, face obscured by a hood that swallowed the light. My breathing hitched, and I stepped back. "Lost are we?" it asked, voice smooth like silk yet laced with an unsettling edge. Those words slithered into my mind, awakening an instinct to flee. But my legs felt heavy, roots of fear binding me to the spot. "I can help you," it continued, taking a slow step forward. The shadows danced around the figure, swirling with an almost lifelike intention. An unshakable fear coursed through me, an echo of that darkness I had only just fought against. "We can be together." The figure raised a hand, and with it came an irresistible darkness that threatened to pull me under. I wanted to scream, but swallowed it back down, a lump forming in my throat. I had come this far. I could not let myself be consumed again. "No," I managed to say, voice trembling. The figure's grin widened, revealing teeth sharper than any blade. That horrifying smile sent a jolt of realization through me. This was not just darkness. It was a part of me, a metaphor for the fears that clung to my spirit. As I stared into the depths of that hood, I felt a surge of defiance wash over me. I wasn't alone. The light inside still burned, igniting visions of everyone I loved, all the moments that mattered. Those memories filled me with strength, pushing back against the dread trying to drag me down. "You cannot have me," I yelled, pulling all the light I could muster. The shadows flickered, shivering as I let the memories transform into a blinding beam, illuminating the darkness surrounding me in an explosion of radiance. But the figure shrieked, its voice clawing at my senses, echoing like the screams of the lost souls I had encountered before. It tried to step back into the shadows, but I was faster. The light surged forward, more powerful than before, threatening to obliterate the darkness in its entirety. Yet, as the figure faltered, I saw hundreds of shadows surge forth behind it, crawling from the depths of the forest, eyes glowing with malice. I was not just facing one dark entity. I was up against all the fears I thought I had conquered. Suddenly, I felt the ground tremble again, splitting further as shadows rose up from the earth, reaching for me, trying to snatch away the light. I was surrounded, teetering on the edge of despair. The weight of their collective presence threatened to crush me, their hisses weaving a tapestry of dread around my mind. I fought against it, pushing back, channeling every ounce of energy I had left into that brilliant flare of light. But then, just as I thought I would surely be consumed, I remembered the warmth of the connections I had formed, the love that tethered me to my purpose. I called out their names like a mantra, letting their memories guide me as I thrust my arms forward, bursting with the intensity of hope. "You cannot break me." The shadows shrieked in response as the brilliance of my light intensively clashed with their darkness. As I unleashed it, I saw the shadows recoil as if struck by lightning, dissolving into vapor and screams. I felt the echo of their pain, but I pressed on, refusing to let that fear take root. With every ounce of my strength, I surged forward, determined to break free from the clutches of despair that tried so hard to hold me down. I could feel the invisible grip loosening, the shadows pulling back, retreating into the darkness they once ruled. Yet even as I felt victory bloom within me, a part of me was aware that this fight was only one chapter in a much larger story. I would have to remain vigilant, for shadows often returned when least expected, lurking just beyond the corners of our minds. But right now, I had triumphed. The path lay clear before me, and as the last echo of the shadows faded, I stepped forward, ready to confront whatever awaited me in this new world, no longer fearing the dark, but embracing the light that guided my way. The forest opened up, revealing unexpected beauty, but I knew I had to remain watchful. The echoes of darkness lingered, chasing just behind, always reminding me of the battle never truly won. As I ventured deeper into the embrace of the trees, I carried that knowledge with me, a reminder that even in the brightest light, shadows could arise, waiting for an opportunity to creep back into my life. The light flickered on, while the darkness slumbered, lying in wait, always testing the boundaries of my resolve. I had emerged, scarred but not broken, and as I walked on, I knew I was prepared for whatever came next. A new journey waited just ahead, and I was ready to face it with the light firmly in my grasp. As I ventured deeper into the forest, each step felt heavier. The air was thick, like I was wading through an unseen fog. I could hear the rustling of leaves around me, but the sounds were too controlled, too deliberate. It felt like something was watching me. I paused, glancing around, heart racing. Shadows danced between the trees, and for a moment, I thought I saw something move in the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, but only the trees stared back at me, their gnarled branches stretching like skeletal fingers against the dim light filtering through. The path beneath my feet began to twist and turn in ways that felt unnatural. I couldn't remember how long I had been walking, but the scenery all started to blur into a haze of darkness and doubt. Suddenly, I heard a distinct call. My name whispered softly but chillingly, sending a jolt through my body. "Help me." The voice was close, echoing through the trees, yet it felt like it came from inside my head. I hesitated, feeling drawn to it. I knew it was dangerous to follow, but a part of me was curious. What if it was someone truly in need? So I stepped off the path, pushed through the underbrush, and followed the sound. The deeper I went, the more the darkness enveloped me. The whispers grew louder, mixing with the rustling leaves, creating an unsettling rhythm that felt almost alive. Then the forest shifted again. The trees began to twist unnaturally, their trunks bending at impossible angles. Their roots writhed like snakes, trying to ensnare my feet. Panic surged within me. I turned to run, but every direction seemed the same. I was lost in a maze of shadows, the creeping darkness having stealthily closed in around me. In my frantic bid for escape, I stumbled into a clearing. The ground was bare, but at its center stood a large, ancient tree. It looked twisted and gnarled, its bark blackened and covered with strange markings that glowed faintly in the dim light. I felt drawn to it, as if it held a secret, something vital. But as I approached, the whispers intensified, growing frantic. "Don't get too close," They warned, sounding more like desperate cries now. I hesitated, feet frozen to the spot. Suddenly, the wind picked up, and the branches of the tree began to sway wildly. I heard a cracking sound, and before I could react, a thick branch broke free. It shot through the air toward me like a spear. I dodged just in time, feeling the rush of air as it barely missed me, crashing into the ground behind. In an instant, the tree roared to life. The roots ripped from the ground, writhing like angry serpents, trying to ensnare me. The whispers turned into shrieks, echoing in my head. I felt terror consuming me as I realized this tree wasn't just a tree. It was alive, a guardian of darkness, seeking to trap anyone daring to approach. Fueled by fear, I dashed away from the clearing, heart pounding. The path seemed to shift again, obscuring any trace of my previous steps. As I ran, strange foliage brushed against my skin. The leaves felt damp and clammy. I glanced over my shoulder and saw shadows slipping between the trees, moving faster than I could run. They were closing in, feeding off my fear. I broke through a thicket and found myself in a small cave, dark and foreboding. I stepped inside, desperate to find refuge, but as I did, the chill of the air wrapped around me, almost suffocating. I pressed my back against the wall, my breath quickening. In the dim light, I noticed symbols etched into the walls of the cave, similar to those on the tree. They pulsed faintly, beckoning me closer. As I examined them, my fingers brushed against one, and a jolt of energy coursed through me, filling my veins with warmth. For a moment, I felt connected to everything, the whispers, the shadows, even the darkness itself. But then, that warmth flickered, replaced by a dread so deep it made me shudder. The whispers grew thick again, forming a chaotic blend of voices. The darkness was gaining on me, and the cave felt like a tomb, cold and suffocating. Suddenly, shadows poured in from the mouth of the cave, swirling like a storm. I backed away, helpless, as they twisted and formed shapes, shadowy figures, some resembling the lost souls I had encountered before. They cried out in anguish, their faces contorted with pain and longing, reaching for me. I closed my eyes, wanting to block it all out, but the cries pierced through my mind. "It's your fault. You must join us." The shadows pressed closer, and I felt their chill seep into my bones. In that moment of despair, something deep within me stirred. I could still feel that light, the warmth I had summoned from my memories. I had to fight, not for me alone, but for those trapped in this dark prison. I summoned every ounce of strength I could find, focusing on the memories that had brought me this far. With a roar, I opened my eyes, letting loose a surge of energy. The shadows recoiled momentarily, but they were relentless, forming a tighter circle around me. I had to act fast or lose myself forever. I directed my energy toward the figures, willing a barrier of light to erupt from within. The warmth expanded, illuminating the cave walls as I pushed against their cold touch. "You won't take me," I shouted, fusing my resolve with the memories that protected my spirit. The shadows screamed, writhing and contorting as they tried to reach through the light, clawing at the barrier. But I held firm, feeling the strength build as memories flickered, friends sharing laughter, moments of love and triumph. Then, something caught my eye beyond the shadows, a glimmer of something shiny on the ground. It was a pendant, reflecting the light. It looked familiar, like something I once had. I extended my hand, reaching for it, and as my fingers brushed against the cool surface, an electric shock coursed through me. The shadows cried out, their forms flickering like dying flames, and with that, the light surged forward, engulfing the entire cave. I felt the energy burst forth, sending a wave of warmth that purged the darkness. As the shadows faded, the cave began to crumble around me. The walls cracked and groaned, and the air filled with dust as the very ground shook beneath me. I had to escape while I still could. 15. I bolted out of the cave, heart pounding, the world outside still dim, but free of the oppressive darkness. I stood at the entrance, watching the cave collapse behind me, the shadows vanishing with it. But I felt the weight of their loss lingering within me. Yet even with this victory, a lingering feeling it wasn't over crept back. The shadows would return, and I knew I couldn't run forever. The forest still awaited, with its haunting whispers echoing, reminding me that my journey through the shadows was only just beginning. Summoning the light I had fought so hard for, I continued forward, determined to confront whatever darkness lay ahead. Each breath took me further into the unknown, armed with the knowledge that while darkness may come, I could shine bright enough to push back against it. With a deep breath, I pressed on. The forest surrounding me was thick and dim. Each step crunched beneath my feet, and it felt like the ground was feeding on my doubts and fears. The trees loomed overhead like giants, blocking out the last bits of daylight. I kept moving, heart racing, but the feeling of being watched returned, prickling over my skin like a swarm of insects. There was something about the shadows that seemed to shift, almost as if they had a mind of their own. I could feel them moving, creeping closer as if they were tasting the air, trying to catch my scent. It was unnerving and made me want to look over my shoulder every few seconds, despite knowing that doing so could only lead to further panic. Then, I heard a low growl coming from behind me. My heart skipped a beat. It was almost too subtle to be real, so I told myself it was only my imagination. But as I stood there, frozen, the growl came again, this time louder, more menacing. My instincts kicked in, and I knew I had to run. I took off down the path, branches snagging at my clothes and skin as I pushed through the thick underbrush. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind me, too close for comfort. It felt like whatever was chasing me was not just in my mind. It was real and closing in. As I ran, the path twisted like a serpent, leading me deeper into the belly of the forest. It was suffocating, and I could feel my breaths growing shallow, raw panic clawing at my throat. I dared to glance back and saw a dark shape moving between the trees, just glimpsing out of the corner of my eye. But when I turned fully, it was gone, vanished into the shadows. My heart raced faster, beating like a war drum in my chest. I surged forward, desperate to escape the darkness. But just as I thought I had gained some distance, I stumbled into a small clearing. The air was heavy, thick with an almost tangible dread that pressed against me, making it hard to breathe. In the center lay a cold, reflecting pool that glimmered like glass. Curiosity gripped me despite the warnings in my head, urging me to avoid it. As if drawn by an invisible force, I approached the water's edge. My reflection stared back at me, but it didn't look like the frightened face I expected. The person staring back was a twisted version of myself, eyes wide with terror, mouth agape, as if silently screaming. I recoiled, stepping back from the edge, but something in the water shifted and moved. Shapes formed beneath the surface. Dark figures swirled like smoke, faces emerging that resembled a haunting gallery of lost souls. They leaned closer, their mouths forming soundless cries. I felt a chill run down my spine as one face caught my eye. It was someone I recognized. It was a friend I had once lost, the memory filled with pain. "Help us!" The silent plea radiated through the surface. My heart ached as I realized these were the lost souls, trapped in this dreadful place. Panic laced with guilt surged through me. I wanted to reach in and pull them out, but I feared the water would pull me in too. I stepped back, heart pounding, but something fierce flickered in my gut. I couldn't leave them trapped like this. Without thinking, I took a step forward, hands reaching toward the mirror-like surface. But the moment my fingertips grazed the water, a screaming rush erupted like a wave, pulling me in. The coldness enveloped me, dragging me down into the depths, and I felt the world above disappear. I gasped, the water around me freezing and dark as I sank deeper. Faces twisted in agony swirled around me, reaching out with ghostly hands. Panic clawed at my chest, and I fought, kicking and thrashing, but the darkness tightened its grip. Then I noticed, just above me, the surface shimmered faintly, light breaking through the suffocating blackness. I strained to swim to it, driven by the desire to break free, to escape the cries of the lost souls circling around me. My body felt heavy, burdened by the weight of their despair, but I wouldn't give in. Summoning every ounce of strength, I pushed upward, breaking through the surface with a gasp. Fresh air flooded my lungs, and I dragged myself out, collapsing onto the ground beside the pool, shivering and soaked. But I wasn't free. The dark figures still floated beneath, their faces twisted into expressions of longing and rage. As I lay there, catching my breath, I heard them again, that chorus of agony rising from the depths. "Stay with us." Fear nearly paralyzed me, but I knew I couldn't let them pull me down again. I scrambled to my feet, my eyes darting around the clearing, searching for an escape. The shadows around the pool were thick, but I had to move. I had to leave this place behind. Just then, the whispers became clear, and as I listened closely, words formed, a warning. "Beware the path of shadows," it echoed. My heart sank as I realized that escaping this pool only meant I was still trapped within the forest's grip. I turned to leave, but the shadows seemed to pulse, coming alive, extending toward me like hands reaching for what they desired. I ran again, but the gnarled roots of the trees sprang up to entwine my ankles. I stumbled, falling hard against the cold ground, panic rising as I struggled against the creeping tendrils gripping at my feet. They were tightening, pulling me further toward the ground, and I could feel the whispers echoing louder, becoming more urgent. They tried to drown my thoughts, filling my mind with darkness. I had just garnered glimpses of hope, and now they threatened to snuff it out entirely. I grasped the pendant I had recovered, its warmth pulsing against my palm. Channeling everything I had left, I concentrated hard, letting light spill out around me. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for them too, the lost souls swirling around me, desperate for escape. With a shout, I thrust my arm outward, letting energy fill the air, igniting the shadows around me. The roots recoiled, shrieking, loosening their grip just enough for me to slip free. I stood, rooted in determination, and faced the dark figures before me. "You cannot have me," I shouted. The atmosphere crackled with energy as light pushed against the darkness, and the shadows began to waver and flicker, torn between wanting to consume me and the warmth I radiated. But in that moment, I thought of those lost souls. If I could just break the cycle, maybe I could free them too. Fueled by hope, I raised the pendant high, its light piercing the shadows. The air roared with a crescendo of whispers and screams, swirling in a chaotic frenzy. Then I felt something shift within the darkness, a fracture forming, a tiny glimmer of what had once been the bond between us, something that could still be saved. As I focused on that light, it grew, brighter, illuminating not just the clearing, but the very heart of the forest. The trees around me began to tremble, the roots pulling away from the ground as if acknowledging my resolve. With one last push, I exploded forth with energy, light spilling out of my heart and shattering the darkness that had held this place captive for far too long. Shadows shrieked and writhed, and I felt a wave of warmth wash over me as the figures broke free, swirling around and above in a dance of freedom. They were rising, leaving the dark depths behind, and for the first time, their cries shifted from despair to joy. They turned to me, gratitude in their eyes, whispering softly now, "Thank you." But even in my moment of triumph, I felt a shiver of doubt. What would come next? This forest still held secrets, and I had only scratched the surface. As the freed souls began to drift away into the light, I stood still, absorbing the essence of what I had achieved. Yet the darkness still loomed, lingering at the edges of my vision, a reminder that while I had won this battle, the war with the shadows was far from over. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself for whatever lay ahead. I had faced the darkness, and I would do so again, determined, no matter the cost. As I stood there, the shadows flickered at the edges of my mind, but I felt a flicker of resolve deep within. I took a tentative step forward, confidence growing with each heartbeat. There was no way I would let this darkness control my fate any longer. The whispers had shifted, becoming a soft murmur of encouragement, and I felt the air around me ripple with the energy of those I had freed. But then, just as I began to feel a sense of victory, the ground trembled beneath my feet. It was a low rumble at first, but it quickly escalated into a violent shaking, as if the very forest itself was awakening from a long slumber. Panic clawed at my throat again as the trees began to sway dangerously. The moon, once partially hidden, broke free from the clouds, pouring a silvery light over everything. It illuminated the twisted shapes of the trees while casting deep shadows like elongated claws reaching for me. I glanced around, scanning for a place to shelter, but the forest was alive in a way that felt hostile. Then, ahead of me, I saw a dark figure taking form. It was larger than anything I had seen, looming over the landscape, emerging from between the trees. My heart raced as I recognized the familiar shape. It was the darkness from the cave, but now it was solidified, taking a twisted, monstrous form. The air grew colder, and I could hear its low growl rumbling through the ground. Determined, I clenched the pendant tight. It pulsed with my heartbeat, reminding me of the light I had harnessed before. I raised it high, focused on every memory that fueled my resolve. The whispers echoed again, but this time they felt like a thunderous roar, urging me to confront the creature before me. Bracing myself, I stepped forward. The gross mass of shadows twitched, followed by a deep, menacing laugh that sent chills racing down my spine. I felt vulnerable, facing something born of pure darkness, something that thrived on fear and despair. With a sudden lurch, the creature lunged toward me, extending dark tendrils like clawed hands reaching for my very essence. I didn't flinch. Instead, I called upon the energy within me, and with all the might I could muster, I unleashed a pulse of warmth from the pendant. It burst forth in a fiery wave, illuminating the dark figure and momentarily pushing back the shadows that surrounded it. The creature shrieked, a sound that vibrated through the air like shattering glass. But just as quickly as I pushed it back, the darkness retaliated. It surged forward, engulfing me in icy tendrils that wrapped around my arms and legs like a vice. My breath caught as despair threatened to swallow me whole. The whispers turned sinister, full of mocking laughter. I could feel the chill seep into my bones. Time seemed to freeze, and in that moment, memories flooded my mind. My loved ones, times of laughter, moments of warmth. I realized that I was not fighting alone. I carried them with me. With a cry that echoed through the forest, I summoned the light one last time, pouring every cherished moment into it. The pendant blazed so brightly that it momentarily blinded me, filling the air with an intense warmth and vibrant colors that painted the scene before me with a glow I had not thought possible. The tendrils trembled and writhed, releasing their grip as the brightness cut through the darkness like a blade. The creature howled in fury, but I stood firm, pushing forward, forcing the light upon it. The shadows twisted and screamed, shrinking back from the warmth and glittering radiance that now surrounded me. The forest came alive, the trees responding to my energy, shivering with anticipation as the creature faltered. Its form began to unravel, dissolving into wisps of shadow that drifted away into the night. With a final, mighty roar, the dark figure shattered into nothingness, scattering like ashes upon the wind. I breathed heavily, my heart pounding, watching as the last remnants of its cold presence vanished into the night sky. The whispers transformed into a soft sigh of relief and gratitude, filling the air with warmth. I had won, but the aftermath left me shaken, filled with the knowledge that darkness would always seek to reclaim its hold. Though I had faced the depths of fear and emerged victorious, I couldn't ignore the lessons learned from this journey. The light I held was powerful, but it required vigilance and courage to remain strong in the face of lurking shadows. As the forest began to calm, a sense of peace washed over me, wrapping around my weary soul. I felt the weight lift, knowing that I had freed not only myself, but also those trapped in despair. It was a heavy burden to bear, but I was ready for it, ready to keep the darkness at bay. With each step away from the clearing, I carried a piece of my journey with me, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a light to guide the way. No longer would I shrink back from the shadows lurking behind the trees. I would face them head-on, determined to protect the light within me and those lost souls who needed guiding love. The forest held many secrets, but I was no longer afraid. I walked onward, confident, knowing that my journey was only beginning.